What if the children you thought were royals suddenly didn't exist in the eyes of the crown? That was the chilling question reverberating through Buckingham Palace earlier this week, and it sent shockwaves far beyond the gilded halls. Imagine sitting in your living room, scrolling through a headline that shatters everything you thought you knew about your family, your legacy, and your future. That is exactly the chaos Meghan Markle faced when King Charles made a decree so unprecedented, so utterly shocking, that it left the former Duchess screaming in disbelief, pacing the corridors of her private estate, unable to fathom how the world had suddenly turned against her children, Archie and Lilibet. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. The story begins not in a courtroom or in the tabloids, but behind palace walls where whispers echo louder than any public announcement. Sources describe King Charles's decision as surgical, calculated, and merciless. Overnight, Archie and Lilibet were stripped from the official registers of royalty, effectively erased from lists that determine privileges, succession rights, and even public acknowledgement. For Meghan, a woman who has long fought to secure her family's place in the royal spotlight, this was not just a personal blow. It was a full-scale attack on everything she had built since marrying Prince Harry. And make no mistake, the ripple effects of this decree are only just beginning. Why now? Why would the king take such drastic action, risking public backlash and inflaming a media frenzy that could overshadow even the most scandalous royal revelations of the past decade? Some insiders claim it is a culmination of years of tension, pent-up frustration, and the looming threat of public exposure of palace secrets. Others argue that it is purely about lineage, the unyielding rules of succession, and the preservation of what Charles believes to be the sanctity of the monarchy. But one thing is certain, no one saw it coming, and the fallout is poised to redefine what it means to be part of the royal family in the 21st century. Imagine the scene. Meghan, reportedly alone in a private study, clutching a letter with the royal seal. Her hands shake, her voice cracks, and she lets out a scream that reportedly echoed through the estate. It was a scream of rage, disbelief, and fear. The scream of a mother who suddenly realized that her children she had publicly celebrated, children whose every milestone she had shared with the world, had been declared invisible by the very institution she once sought to join. But what did this decree truly mean? Were Archie and Lilibet unborn in the eyes of the monarchy, or was this a legal maneuver, a subtle erasure meant to protect the crown from perceived threats? The answers are murky, and the palace has remained tight-lipped, only adding to the growing speculation. You may be asking yourself, how could this even happen? Royal succession is typically a rigid, centuries-old system governed by laws, tradition, and historical precedent. Yet here we are, witnessing a king seemingly rewrite the rules in real time, bypassing decades of ceremonial norms and striking directly at the Sussexes. And while Meghan is the public face of outrage, the reverberations reach all corners of the family. Prince Harry, reportedly informed late in the evening via a confidential call, is said to have been blindsided, leaving him reeling in a mixture of anger, frustration, and helplessness. Imagine being a royal, accustomed to control, protocol, and privilege, only to discover that the institution you devoted your life to can simply erase your existence with the stroke of a pen. What makes this story so compelling, and why you should pay attention right now, is not just the personal drama, but the larger implications. When a king takes action like this, it is more than family drama. It becomes a historic moment, a precedent that could shape the monarchy for generations. It is a reminder that behind the pomp, the crowns, and the carefully curated public image, the royal family is still deeply human. It is filled with jealousy, secrecy, power struggles, and yes, moments of shocking cruelty. And in this case, the power wielded by King Charles may be absolute, but the consequences, legal, social, and emotional, are anything but predictable. Insiders report that the palace had been preparing for this move for months, quietly reviewing documents, vetting legal pathways, and consulting advisors on how to enforce a decree that could otherwise be challenged in courts across the globe. Every detail was calculated: timing, messaging, and the potential blowback from public opinion. And yet, despite meticulous planning, the reaction was instantaneous and explosive. The news leaked first through whispered conversations, then through tabloid headlines, and finally through the digital megaphone of social media, where memes, speculation, and outrage spread faster than any official statement could contain them. For Meghan, the media storm was the final insult, a public airing of a private humiliation she could neither control nor prevent. But what does this mean for Archie and Lilibet? The children are, in many ways, innocent casualties of a war they did not choose. Stripped of royal titles and privileges, they face a reality that is incomprehensible to most of us. While they remain beloved by their parents and a growing number of supporters worldwide, their erasure from official registers carries weight in ceremonies, public events, and even international recognition. Every birthday, public appearance, or historical record now carries a layer of complication, and Meghan is left to navigate these treacherous waters alone, or so it seems. The emotional stakes are immense, and the story is far from over. As we unpack this saga, the questions multiply. How far will Meghan go to fight back? Will Prince Harry take a more active role, risking further estrangement from the monarchy? What are the legal and historical implications of a king declaring his grandchildren ghosts? And perhaps most importantly, what secrets lie behind the decision that could unravel decades of royal tradition? The answers are complex, and in the coming chapters, we will peel back layer after layer of this unprecedented royal scandal. Each revelation will shock you. Each twist will make you question everything you thought you knew about the monarchy, and each moment will bring us closer to the truth behind the screams, the decrees, and the invisible children at the heart of it all. And yet, despite the shock, the disbelief, and the fury, there is a story that has barely begun to unfold. Behind closed doors, whispers of palace betrayals, hidden evidence, and explosive documents circulate. Allies and adversaries maneuver in silence, and the world watches, hungry for the next twist. Meghan's scream is not the final word, it is merely the opening act. What comes next could shatter the monarchy's carefully maintained image and force the public to confront uncomfortable truths about power, privilege, and parental love in the shadow of a crown. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. King Charles just crossed a line no one dared to imagine. That sentence alone sent a ripple of panic through the palace. But for Meghan Markle, it was the opening salvo of a storm she would never recover from. The decree was concise, cold, and utterly absolute. In one fell stroke, Archie and Lilibet, the children she had fought to protect, the children whose existence had been the center of her life for years, were stripped of every official royal designation. No titles, no privileges, no recognition on the official lists of succession. In the blink of an eye, they had become, in the eyes of the monarchy, invisible. Inside the private corridors of Buckingham Palace, the air was thick with disbelief. Advisors whispered hurriedly, some shaking their heads at the audacity of the move, while others nodded grimly, acknowledging that King Charles had, in his mind, every right to assert control over the royal line. The question that lingered everywhere was simple, terrifying, and unavoidable. Why now? The context behind the decree was complex, layered with years of tension, secrecy, and unspoken resentments. Sources close to the palace suggest that the king had been weighing this action for months, consulting legal experts, reviewing precedents, and preparing for the inevitable media fallout. Unlike previous generations, Charles faced a modern world where information spreads instantly, and every move could be dissected, mocked, and politicized in real time. And yet, he seemed undeterred. The risk, it seems, was worth it. For Meghan, the delivery of the news was nothing short of catastrophic. She reportedly received a formal letter, hand-delivered to her private estate, bearing the royal seal. According to insiders, she read it alone, the words blurring as tears pricked her eyes. She screamed, a scream of rage, of despair, of utter disbelief. In that moment, she was not a public figure, not a duchess, not a media personality. She was a mother watching the institution she had once sought to align with erase her children from history. The decree itself was surgical. It cited legal and ceremonial authority, referencing the letters patent that govern royal succession and the inclusion of children in the official roles of the family. It made clear that, In the eyes of the crown, Archie and Lilibet no longer held any claim to royal status. Titles could be reassigned, ceremonial roles revoked, and future events. Birthdays, christenings, public appearances were now subject to strict royal approval, with their names omitted from invitations and official records. The language was precise, leaving no room for misinterpretation. This was not a suggestion. This was a mandate. As shocking as the legal ramifications were, the emotional stakes were even higher. Imagine living in a world where, suddenly, your children's identities were questioned by the very institution meant to protect them. For Meghan, this was more than protocol. It was a deeply personal affront. Every photo, every public appearance, every carefully curated social media post was now tainted by the decree. Archival material that once celebrated her children as members of the royal family was suddenly controversial. Critics seized on every detail, amplifying her humiliation to a global audience. The palace, aware of this, had timed the announcement to maximize impact, ensuring that the story would dominate headlines, social feeds, and water-cooler conversations alike. King Charles's reasoning, according to palace insiders, was rooted in a mixture of legal interpretation, traditionalist thinking, and personal grievance. He reportedly viewed the Sussexes' public visibility and media ventures as a threat to the crown's authority. By removing Archie and Lilibet from official status, he could assert control, reinforce the sanctity of the royal line, and signal that no member, regardless of parentage or fame, was beyond the reach of royal protocol. But while his strategy might have been precise, the human cost was monumental. News of the decree leaked almost immediately, first through palace insiders, then through tabloid reporters, and finally through social media, where every post was dissected, analyzed, and debated. Memes and speculation spread like wildfire, some sympathetic to Meghan, others applauding the king's boldness. The public was captivated, and yet, the full story, the private devastation, the whispered palace conversations, the strategic maneuvering, remained hidden from view. For those inside, the tension was palpable. Every aide, every advisor, every family member knew that the next move could escalate beyond anything seen in modern royal history. Meghan, reportedly, did not remain passive. Within hours of receiving the decree, she was in consultation with legal advisors, media strategists, and trusted friends. Her response was a combination of fury, calculation, and desperation. How could she protect her children from being erased? How could she challenge the king without triggering even more public scrutiny? Every option carried risk, yet inaction was no longer viable. The stakes had shifted, and the line between personal family conflict and global spectacle blurred entirely. But the decree was not only a personal affront. It also had historical significance. No previous monarch in recent memory had so explicitly stripped grandchildren of recognition, particularly children who had been publicly celebrated. The move set a precedent that scholars, historians, and royal commentators would be analyzing for years. What legal challenges could arise? How would this reshape the future of succession? Could other members of the family be similarly affected? Each question added to the sense of drama, making the story not just a scandal, but a historic moment in the life of the British monarchy. In the aftermath, tensions inside the palace reportedly skyrocketed. Loyal aides tried to mediate, siblings exchanged terse messages, and even long-standing allies were reportedly divided over how to respond. Prince Harry, though thousands of miles away, was said to have received the news late at night, his reaction a mixture of disbelief and anger. Meghan, meanwhile, prepared for what insiders described as an all-out defense, signaling that this was far from over. Every move, every statement, every press release was now a chess piece in a game that would determine not just the future of her children, but potentially the credibility of the monarchy itself. And yet, even in this maelstrom of legal maneuvering, media frenzy, and family tension, one fact remained undeniable. Archie and Lilibet's official erasure had transformed a private family dispute into a public spectacle. Every action taken by the Sussexes would now be scrutinized, every appearance analyzed, and every word dissected. The king had drawn a line, and crossing it had consequences that extended far beyond Buckingham Palace, far beyond Meghan's private anguish, and far beyond the boundaries of any previously recorded royal scandal. But just as Meghan prepared to respond, insiders reported a new twist. The king's decree may not have been the final word. Hidden within palace archives, confidential letters, and secret registers lay details that could further complicate the narrative. Could the Sussexes find evidence to challenge the decision? Or would the monarchy's authority prove unassailable, leaving Meghan, Harry, and the world to grapple with a reality where the children they knew were suddenly ghosts? What came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Are Archie and Lilibet even real in the eyes of the monarchy? That question has sent shockwaves far beyond palace walls, igniting a storm of speculation, gossip, and outright disbelief. For Meghan Markle, it is more than a rhetorical question. It is a direct assault on the children she loves and has fiercely protected since the day they were born. The term ghost kids, whispered in media circles, has become a viral shorthand for a story that is as dramatic as it is shocking. But what does it actually mean, and why has it captivated the world? The narrative begins with the delicate interplay between public perception and royal secrecy. Archie and Lilibet, celebrated in photographs, christenings, and public appearances, have always been visible to the world. Yet according to leaked palace documents, their names were conspicuously absent from certain official registers. These registers, maintained with meticulous care for centuries, determine the order of succession, access to titles, and even participation in state functions. To be excluded from them is to be, in a very real sense, erased from history. Insiders suggest that the removal was not merely procedural. It was symbolic, designed to send a clear message. No one, not even the children of a former senior royal, is beyond the reach of the monarchy's authority. The term ghost kids is therefore not just a media invention. It reflects a cold, calculated decision that transforms children into legal non-entities in a centuries-old institution that prizes lineage above all else. For Meghan, this revelation is devastating. Imagine seeing the evidence. Official records that omit your child's existence, correspondence confirming the decree, and a clear message that the monarchy does not recognize them as full members of the royal family. Sources close to the former Duchess describe a mixture of shock, disbelief, and raw fury. She reportedly spent hours poring over documents, questioning their authenticity, and demanding explanations from legal advisors. The realization that the children she has celebrated and publicly championed could be declared invisible is an emotional blow few could endure. The story becomes even murkier when we consider allegations of surrogacy, hidden adoptions, and, in some reports, the use of body doubles. While these claims remain unverified, the whispers themselves have created an explosive narrative. Could it be possible that the children appearing in public were not living full-time with their parents? Were they flown in for appearances, events, and photo ops? The palace, as always, remains silent, but insiders hint that documents exist which suggest the children's presence and visibility have been carefully managed for decades. It is not only the mechanics of the children's status that shock the public, but the implications. If the palace can declare royal children non-entities, what does this mean for the future of the monarchy? Could other lines be challenged, rewritten, or erased if deemed inconvenient or politically sensitive? The thought alone has fueled speculation among royal watchers, journalists, and historians alike. This is not merely a personal battle. It is a challenge to the very structure of the institution. And yet, despite these revelations, the children themselves remain oblivious to the storm raging around them. In private, Meghan reportedly shields them from the reality of their erasure, creating a protective bubble against a world that has suddenly become hostile and confusing. But reality has a way of seeping in, even through carefully curated experiences. Every public appearance, every photo, every interaction with extended family carries an invisible weight. The knowledge that the monarchy may not recognize their existence, no matter how real they are to those who love them. The term ghost kids has therefore taken on a symbolic power. It captures the tension between legal recognition and emotional reality, between public perception and private truth. Archie and Lilibet, in this narrative, are simultaneously visible and invisible, celebrated and erased, loved by their parents and denied by the institution they were born into. For Meghan, the stakes could not be higher. She must navigate a world where her children's legitimacy is questioned, their identities manipulated, and their futures uncertain, all while maintaining a public image of composure and grace. But what is behind this erasure? Palace sources suggest that the king may have been motivated by more than tradition or protocol. Some claim he viewed Meghan's media presence, outspoken advocacy, and global fame as a threat to the monarchy's stability. Others hint at personal grievances. Charles reportedly harbored frustration at the Sussexes' autonomy, perceiving it as a challenge to royal authority. Removing Archie and Lilibet from official records, then, becomes both a statement of power and a warning to anyone who might consider bypassing tradition. For the public, the narrative is electrifying. Every report, every leak, every image becomes a point of speculation. Did Meghan deliberately attempt to hide aspects of the children's lives to protect them, or were there decisions made behind the scenes that even she did not fully control? Why has the palace chosen to reveal this information now? And what will be the consequences, not just for Meghan, but for Harry, the children, and the future of the monarchy itself? These are questions that fuel endless debates online, drawing millions into a story that seems to grow more shocking with each passing day. In private, Meghan is said to have mobilized her inner circle, consulting legal experts, media advisors, and trusted confidants to strategize her next move. She reportedly considered public statements, legal challenges, and even the possibility of publishing private correspondence to prove the legitimacy of Archie and Lilibet. Every step, however, carries risk. Each action could escalate tensions, provoke a harsher response from the palace, or even backfire publicly. The delicate balance between defending her children and maintaining influence is something few could navigate successfully, and Meghan is now at the center of a storm where every decision matters. Meanwhile, the monarchy appears equally calculated in its approach. Reports suggest that documents, letters, and archival records were meticulously prepared to support the king's decree. The timing of the announcement, the controlled leaks, and the subsequent public messaging were all orchestrated to maximize impact and minimize challenge. This was not a spontaneous decision. It was a deliberate, strategic move aimed at asserting authority, preserving tradition, and sending a clear message to the Sussexes and the broader public. And yet, despite the careful planning, the ripple effects are unpredictable. Public opinion is divided, social media is ablaze, and even some senior members of the royal family are reportedly unsettled by the unprecedented action. How will Harry respond in the coming weeks? Will Meghan escalate her defense? And most importantly, could there be hidden evidence, documents, recordings, or correspondence that challenges the king's authority in ways no one expects? The story of Archie and Lilibet's erasure is far from simple. It is a drama of power, secrecy, and emotion, unfolding in real time and affecting real people. It is a story that challenges assumptions about family, loyalty, and the very nature of legacy. And for Meghan, it is a personal battle on the world stage, one where the stakes could not be higher and the outcomes remain terrifyingly uncertain. But as the palace and the Sussexes braced for the next moves, insiders revealed an even more shocking detail. There may be evidence suggesting that Lilibet's true parentage, and perhaps even Archie's, is not as publicly understood. The whispers hinted at documents, letters, and hidden testimonies that could rewrite everything the world thinks it knows about the children. What came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. A confrontation erupted, and the walls of Buckingham shook. That is how one palace insider described the infamous meeting between Meghan Markle and King Charles. The meeting that would redefine not only Meghan's position within the royal family, but also the public perception of power, privilege, and parental protection. What began as a quiet afternoon consultation escalated into a scene of fury, disbelief, and emotional chaos that few could have predicted. Imagine Meghan, still reeling from the decree that officially erased Archie and Lilibet from the list of royals, storming into the private audience chamber. Her heart pounded. Her mind raced. Every thought she had carried about protecting her children, about her role in the royal family, now collided with the reality that the king had acted decisively and without warning. She demanded answers. Questions that had no clear responses and a sense of betrayal that cut deeper than any public scandal ever could. Charles, calm yet resolute, reportedly delivered his reasoning with a mixture of legal precision and personal conviction. The king's message was clear: tradition, lineage, and the monarchy's authority outweighed personal sentiment. In his eyes, Archie and Lilibet's removal was not cruel, it was necessary. It was a correction, a reaffirmation that royal protocol must be preserved above all else. But for Meghan, this explanation was meaningless. She saw it as an attack, a deliberate erasure of her children's legitimacy, and a challenge to her power as a mother. The confrontation quickly escalated. Meghan, usually measured in public, was said to have raised her voice, gesturing wildly, challenging the king's logic and demanding that he reconsider. The palace staff reportedly tried to intervene, sensing the tension reaching a boiling point, but Charles held firm. He would not yield. The atmosphere became electric, charged with the collision of authority and raw maternal instinct. Can you imagine being in that room, feeling every word like a blow, knowing that the institution you once respected was systematically dismantling your family's identity? During the showdown, Meghan reportedly highlighted the children's innocence, the public image she had painstakingly cultivated, and the global support she had amassed. She demanded that the king understand the human cost of his actions. She reminded him of every milestone, every photograph, every carefully orchestrated public appearance where the children had been celebrated as members of the royal family. And yet, despite her pleas, Charles remained unmoved, his authority unwavering. The room was not only filled with tension, but also with historical weight. Every decision made in Buckingham Palace is steeped in centuries of tradition, and for Charles, adherence to protocol was non-negotiable. But the clash revealed a vulnerability rarely seen in royal interactions: the stark contrast between the cold machinery of monarchy and the raw, unfiltered emotion of a mother fighting for her children. The result was a confrontation that insiders describe as historic, emotional, and utterly shocking. Audience questions are unavoidable here. What would you do if the person meant to safeguard your children refused to acknowledge their existence? Could you maintain composure, or would your anger erupt as Meghan's did? How far would you go to protect your family when the law, tradition, and centuries of protocol are stacked against you? These are not rhetorical. They are the very real stakes Meghan faced in that chamber, and they frame the drama of the royal showdown in a way that few outside the walls can fully comprehend. The shouting reportedly escalated to a crescendo. Meghan's voice echoed through the corridors, reverberating off the ornate walls and reaching the ears of palace aides who were frozen in shock. Some accounts describe her as pounding her fists on the table, demanding the king reverse the decree. Others report that she threatened to go public, to reveal hidden correspondence and palace secrets that would expose the inner workings of the monarchy in ways no one had imagined. The sheer intensity of her reaction reflected not only her love for her children, but also the depth of her desperation. A desperation born from the realization that the royal system was not designed to protect her family, but to preserve itself. Charles, for his part, reportedly remained measured. Observers say he listened, interjected calmly, and reiterated his position with unwavering authority. But beneath the calm exterior, some sources hint at tension, perhaps even doubt. Was this confrontation a test of Meghan's resolve, a measure of how far she would push before breaking? Or was it simply the inevitability of a clash between two forces, one a mother willing to fight to the end, the other a monarch determined to uphold centuries of tradition? As the meeting drew on, Meghan reportedly attempted a final, desperate plea. She reminded the king of the public narrative she had shaped, the millions who admired her, and the children who were suddenly caught in the crossfire. She implored him to consider the long-term consequences, not just for the monarchy, but for the world's perception of fairness, justice, and parental love. The king listened, but reportedly did not waver. His decision had been made, and no argument, no emotional appeal, could sway him. But the showdown was far from over. While Meghan left the chamber seething, sources indicate that the confrontation set in motion a chain of events that would escalate the conflict to levels previously unseen in royal history. The king, having asserted his authority, may have underestimated the lengths Meghan would go to reclaim her children's recognition. Legal teams were mobilized, media strategies were discussed, and behind the palace doors, an escalating war of influence, power, and secrets began to unfold. And the public? They were only just becoming aware of the storm. Early reports leaked of Meghan's emotional outburst, her threats to challenge the decree, and the tension inside Buckingham Palace. Social media exploded with speculation. Could Meghan actually succeed? Would Harry intervene? What secrets might the palace be hiding that could further complicate the story? The world watched, riveted, as a battle that was once private became a public spectacle, the stakes higher than ever. The emotional stakes, however, were the most profound. For Meghan, this confrontation was not just about titles or privileges. It was about her children's identity, their place in the world, and the right to be recognized as who they truly are. The clash revealed a truth rarely acknowledged in royal circles. Behind the pomp, the ceremonies, and the public appearances lies a human story of fear, love, and desperate determination. Meghan's screams were not just noise. They were the expression of a mother confronting an institution that had, in one calculated move, threatened to erase her children from history. And yet, even as Meghan plotted her next move, insiders hint that the king may have additional cards up his sleeve. Confidential documents, undisclosed evidence, and private communications could shift the balance in ways no one expected. Meghan's fury, her desperation, and her strategic maneuvering would all collide with these secrets in the days to come. What came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Hidden for decades, the list that decides who is truly royal. That phrase has become the whisper that circulates through the gilded halls of Buckingham Palace, the term on the tip of royal historians' tongues, and now the focus of global speculation. Few outsiders realize that the monarchy keeps more than public registers and ceremonial seating charts. Beneath the surface lies a private, meticulously maintained record, known only to a select few, documenting who is officially recognized as a member of the royal family. And it is this list that has made Archie and Lilibet disappear overnight. Imagine a ledger so secret, so carefully guarded, that even senior royals sometimes do not know its exact contents. It dictates succession, ceremonial privileges, and historical acknowledgement. Its entries are not simply names. They are declarations of legitimacy, of heritage, and of belonging. To be included is to exist within the monarchy's formal memory. To be excluded is to vanish. For Meghan Markle, the realization that her children had been quietly removed from this sacred document was a gut-wrenching shock. This was more than a legal adjustment. It was an erasure, a removal from history itself. The list is not a public document. It exists in a private archive, heavily secured, with access granted only to the monarch, select advisors, and senior officials. Sources describe it as a ledger of immense significance. Every birth, every christening, every change in title meticulously recorded. For centuries, it has served as the backbone of royal continuity, ensuring that lineage, inheritance, and ceremonial protocol are preserved. But for Meghan and Harry, the existence of this secret record now represents the ultimate weapon wielded by the king. The children who were once publicly celebrated are, in one calculated move, legally invisible. So why is this list so important? Beyond titles and succession, inclusion or removal from the ledger affects nearly every aspect of royal life. Invitations to state ceremonies, access to royal residences, participation in historical photographs, all are contingent upon recognition. For Archie and Lilibet, removal from the list means their names will no longer appear in official archives, their presence in family events may be curtailed, and even the narrative of their royal identity is now subject to challenge. The consequences are both symbolic and practical, affecting not only perception but the tangible experience of being a member of the royal family. For Meghan, this knowledge has become a source of both fear and fury. How does a mother protect children who, in the eyes of history, no longer exist? How do you preserve their identity when an entire institution is invested in rewriting it? Insiders report that she has spent hours reviewing documents, cross-referencing public announcements, and consulting advisors about the ramifications of the list. Every omission, every blank line, every signature or lack thereof carries weight. And every day that passes without action feels like a victory for those who seek to diminish her family's legacy. The secrecy surrounding the list has fueled speculation and conspiracy theories. Some allege that certain senior advisors have historically manipulated entries to favor particular heirs or to protect the institution from perceived scandals. Others suggest that the king has used the list strategically, removing Archie and Lilibet not because they lack legitimacy, but to assert his authority and send a clear signal. No one, regardless of fame or public support, is above royal law. These claims remain unverified, yet they illustrate the intense drama hidden behind the palace's closed doors. Consider the psychological weight of the situation. For Meghan, the removal is a symbolic blow that challenges her role as a mother and protector. For Harry, it represents a challenge to his ability to shield his children from the rigid hierarchy of royal tradition. And for the broader family, the secret list has become a tool of power, capable of elevating or erasing individuals at the monarch's discretion. The children, though innocent, are caught in the crossfire of decades of tradition, legal authority, and palace politics. The public rarely sees this aspect of the monarchy. They see the ceremonial roles, the public appearances, and the titles announced in glossy magazines. Few are aware of the existence of a hidden ledger that quietly dictates legitimacy and erasure. And yet, this is the instrument that has turned Archie and Lilibet into ghost kids, invisible in legal and historical terms, despite the public celebration of their lives. The secrecy intensifies the drama, as the outside world struggles to understand how children who have been present in photos, videos, and media reports can suddenly be denied recognition. Historians and royal commentators have weighed in, noting that while the monarchy has historically exercised discretion over recognition, nothing compares to the erasure of living, publicly acknowledged grandchildren. The list is typically used to organize succession or ceremonial roles, not to remove children entirely. The unprecedented nature of Charles's action has made the palace staff, legal advisors, and historians alike rethink assumptions about royal authority. Could this be a one-off, or a precedent for future decisions? The uncertainty adds to the tension, making the story far more than a simple family feud. It becomes a question of institutional power, control, and the fragility of legacy. Meanwhile, the list has become a source of intrigue for the public and media alike. Tabloids speculate endlessly. Who else might be missing from these secret registers? How far does the king's authority extend? And could other members of the family face similar erasure in the future? Meghan, of course, is acutely aware of these questions, and insiders report that she views every media speculation as both an opportunity and a threat. The narrative, she realizes, is as powerful as the legal facts themselves. Even more alarming, sources indicate that there may be additional layers of secrecy. Documents hidden deep within palace archives could reveal information about past adjustments to the list, previously unacknowledged corrections, or even disputes among advisors. If such materials were to surface, they could not only challenge the king's authority, but also complicate Meghan's public defense. Every day, the stakes escalate, and every action carries both opportunity and danger. The story of the secret list demonstrates that the battle over Archie and Lilibet is not just emotional or personal. It is structural, historical, and institutional. Meghan is facing an opponent armed with centuries of tradition, legal authority, and meticulous documentation. Yet she is not powerless. Allies, legal experts, and media strategists have begun exploring ways to challenge, expose, or circumvent the secrecy, raising the possibility of a confrontation that could rewrite what it means to exist within the royal family. And just as Meghan prepares her next move, insiders reveal another startling detail. The secret list may contain evidence not only about their official status, but also about their parentage, legitimacy, and potential rights to succession. Could there be a hidden note, a cryptic entry, or a signature that changes everything? The whispers suggest that the next revelation will be more explosive than the decree itself, potentially reshaping public perception, royal protocol, and Meghan's strategy entirely. What came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The world erupted when tabloids caught wind of the news. That line barely captures the magnitude of the storm that followed King Charles's unprecedented decree. From social media to 24-hour news channels, the revelation that Archie and Lilibet had been removed from the official list of royals sent shockwaves through households across the globe. People could hardly believe it. Children who had been celebrated in photos, videos, and public appearances were suddenly being declared invisible in the eyes of the monarchy. And Meghan? She had become the unwilling center of a worldwide spectacle that was as unforgiving as it was relentless. The fallout began almost immediately. Social media platforms flooded with hashtags, memes, and speculation. Hashtag #GhostKids trended within hours. Every tweet, post, and article dissected the decree, analyzed the king's intentions, and questioned Meghan's next moves. Supporters rallied behind her, framing the story as a mother's fight against an unyielding institution. Critics, meanwhile, argued that the king was merely enforcing tradition and maintaining the sanctity of the royal lineage. The polarized response created a perfect storm, with Meghan at the eye of it, struggling to control the narrative while facing relentless scrutiny. News outlets around the world scrambled to cover the story, each seeking the most dramatic angle. Headlines screamed accusations, sympathy, outrage, and scandal. One outlet described the removal as historic erasure, while another framed it as the monarchy taking back control. The coverage was relentless, with daily updates, anonymous palace leaks, and in-depth analyses from commentators and historians alike. For Meghan, this wasn't just news. It was a public trial, conducted in real time, with millions of spectators passing judgment before any full story could emerge. The intensity of the media coverage amplified Meghan's emotional response. Sources close to the former Duchess described sleepless nights, frantic phone calls, and heated discussions with advisors as she tried to strategize her next move. Every new headline, every viral post, felt like a personal attack. She was grappling with a reality that was both intensely private and irrevocably public. Can you imagine reading about your children being called ghosts in international media while trying to maintain your composure for legal, diplomatic, and personal reasons? The psychological pressure was immense, and the stakes could not have been higher. Public fascination extended beyond news outlets and social media. Celebrities, politicians, and influencers weighed in, adding their voices to a story that had already captured the imagination of millions. Some expressed outrage at the king's decision, others sided with tradition, and a few even offered strategic advice to Meghan. The sheer volume of commentary turned the royal drama into a cultural event, one that blurred the lines between personal family conflict and global spectacle. Every tweet, Instagram post, and news segment added layers to the narrative, shaping public opinion and further complicating Meghan's ability to respond. Yet, the media frenzy also revealed deeper truths about the relationship between the monarchy and the public. Historically, royal decisions were filtered through official statements and carefully managed press releases. Now, in the digital age, information spreads instantly, with speculation often outweighing fact. The story of Archie and Lilibet became a prime example of this dynamic. Rumors, insider accounts, and anonymous leaks circulated as widely as verified reports, creating an environment in which reality and perception blurred. Meghan's challenge was not just to respond to the king, but to navigate a media landscape that could amplify any misstep into a global scandal. Adding to the drama was the role of tabloids and paparazzi. Fleet-footed reporters trailed Meghan, capturing every public appearance, every private gesture, and every interaction with her inner circle. Photos and videos were dissected, reinterpreted, and published as evidence of her emotional state, her reaction to the decree, and even her parenting choices. Each image became a talking point, fueling speculation and judgment. For Meghan, this relentless attention created a sense of suffocation, as if every move was scrutinized not only for its accuracy, but also for its potential to inflame the story further. The public's reaction was equally intense. Online forums exploded with debate. Supporters of Meghan framed the story as a mother's fight against an oppressive institution, highlighting her resilience, courage, and love for her children. Critics argued that the king's decision was necessary to preserve tradition, framing Meghan's outbursts as publicity stunts or attempts to manipulate public sentiment. The polarized response intensified the emotional stakes, forcing Meghan to balance public perception, media strategy, and her own maternal instincts. Audience question: what would you do if the world was watching your every move while someone tried to erase your children from history? Could you maintain composure, or would you explode as Meghan did? Behind the scenes, the media frenzy also had tactical implications. Advisors warned Meghan that every statement, every public appearance, and every leaked image could be weaponized by the palace. The king's team, aware of the digital storm, reportedly coordinated with media strategists to ensure that public opinion would be managed in favor of tradition, carefully releasing details in a way that minimized challenges. In this high-stakes game, information itself became a weapon, and both sides had to navigate a battlefield where perception often mattered more than reality. The frenzy was not limited to tabloids or social media. International news outlets picked up the story, adding geopolitical dimensions to the scandal. Commentators in Europe, North America, and Asia debated the significance of the king's decree, examining its legal, historical, and cultural implications. Some framed it as a necessary enforcement of royal authority. Others questioned whether the monarchy had overstepped its bounds, erasing children for reasons beyond public comprehension. The story had become global, transforming a family dispute into a historic spectacle watched by millions. Even royal historians were forced to weigh in. Experts compared the situation to historical precedents, noting that while lineage disputes and title removals had occurred, nothing mirrored the erasure of publicly acknowledged grandchildren. Some argued that the king's authority was absolute within the confines of tradition. Others cautioned that public outrage could destabilize the monarchy's reputation and influence future succession debates. Meghan, in turn, had to consider these perspectives as she planned her next moves, knowing that the narrative was now being shaped not only by her actions, but also by the interpretation of experts and influencers worldwide. Amidst the frenzy, Meghan reportedly focused on controlling the story where she could. Advisors suggested selective leaks, media appearances, and private interviews that could humanize her children and counteract the ghost kid narrative. Every move was calculated, every word weighed for impact, and every interaction scrutinized. The pressure was enormous, and the emotional toll was undeniable. Meghan's resilience and strategic thinking were tested like never before, as the story continued to evolve with each passing hour. And yet, even as she maneuvered, the palace retained control of critical information. The decree remained legally binding, and the king's team monitored media responses closely. Every leak, every commentary, and every public reaction was observed, interpreted, and, if necessary, countered. The battle between Meghan and the monarchy had escalated beyond private confrontation. It had become a global spectacle, with each side wielding information, influence, and emotion as their weapons. But just as the media storm reached its peak, insiders hinted at a new twist. Confidential interviews, undisclosed documents, and private communications were about to surface. Details that could further complicate the story, challenge the decree, and force Meghan into an even more high-stakes confrontation. The public, hungry for every development, had no idea what was coming next. What came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Behind the scenes, lawyers were already at war. That is how insiders described the moment the first legal documents related to King Charles's decree hit Meghan Markle's team. While the public was consumed with headlines, memes, and media speculation, a much more consequential battle was unfolding in silence. A high-stakes legal conflict that would determine the status of Archie and Lilibet, the authority of the king, and the very definition of royal legitimacy in modern Britain. Few outside those walls understood the depth of the conflict. Fewer still could anticipate just how explosive it would become. Imagine a world where centuries of royal tradition collide with modern law, where every clause, every precedent, and every legal loophole is dissected with meticulous care. That was the battlefield Meghan faced. Insiders described the initial shock of the decree as only the opening act. The legal implications were staggering. Not only had the king stripped her children of titles and recognition, but he had also implicitly challenged their very existence within the royal hierarchy. Every lawyer she consulted emphasized the gravity. Overturning such a decree was unprecedented. It had never been done before, and the risks, for her, her children, and even the monarchy, were monumental. From the outset, Meghan's legal team faced daunting challenges. First, there was the question of jurisdiction. Could a British court intervene in a matter so deeply entwined with royal prerogative? Traditionally, the monarch has enjoyed sweeping authority in matters of succession and official recognition. But modern legal interpretation suggested that, while rare, there might be avenues to challenge the decree if evidence could show harm, procedural errors, or violations of rights. This created a delicate tightrope: pursue legal action and risk public humiliation, or concede and face the complete erasure of her children's royal status. Reports indicate that Meghan's team immediately mobilized, examining historical precedents, reviewing letters patent, and scouring centuries of legal cases involving succession, legitimacy, and royal recognition. Each document carried weight. Each historical example served as a potential blueprint, and each obscure precedent became a weapon. It was a legal chess game with high stakes, where every move could tip the balance in favor of the king, or catastrophically against her. Complicating matters was the king's legal strategy. Sources describe a meticulous operation, confidential memos, carefully drafted decrees, and a legal infrastructure designed to anticipate every possible challenge. Charles's team, reportedly, even coordinated with senior advisors and historians to fortify the decree, ensuring that it rested on an unassailable foundation of precedent and tradition. For Meghan, this meant that every countermeasure had to be precise, rapid, and backed by compelling evidence. One wrong step could give the monarchy the upper hand and silence her claims permanently. Amidst the legal wrangling, emotional stakes soared. Meghan reportedly spent hours reviewing documents with tears in her eyes, oscillating between despair and determination. She knew that the legal battle was about more than rules and precedent. It was about her children's identity, her authority as a mother, and her ability to protect them from institutional erasure. Imagine sitting in a room filled with lawyers, poring over centuries-old documents, while knowing that every clause, every omission, could dictate your children's fate. The emotional toll was immense. Audience questions loom large here. How would you fight an institution that has centuries of tradition, legal precedent, and global influence backing it? Could you challenge the authority of a king, armed with history and unshakable power? For Meghan, the answer was both personal and strategic. Every legal argument, every potential counterclaim, became a tool not just to restore titles, but to assert the basic human right of recognition for her children. The secrecy surrounding the legal battle added another layer of tension. None of the details were public. No press releases, no leaks, no statements. Just the quiet, high-stakes maneuvering of lawyers behind closed doors. Meghan's team reportedly worked around the clock, coordinating with barristers familiar with royal law, constitutional law, and human rights law, seeking every angle to challenge the king's decree. Each strategy carried risk. Every potential move had consequences, not only legally but politically and publicly. And then there were the threats, subtle yet significant. Insiders hint that palace lawyers had prepared contingency measures, anticipating Meghan's possible legal challenges. Confidential letters, records of internal meetings, and archive correspondence could be released to counter any claims she made. It was a battle in which knowledge itself was a weapon, and controlling the narrative became just as important as mastering the law. In parallel, advisors reportedly considered public strategy. While the legal battle unfolded quietly, Meghan needed to shape public perception. Media appearances, selective leaks, and controlled messaging were all considered essential to ensuring that global support would bolster her legal position. The intertwining of law, media, and public opinion created a scenario where every move had to be precise, every statement vetted, and every action considered in the broader context of a global audience. The stakes of the hidden legal battle cannot be overstated. If Meghan failed, the consequences would extend far beyond the personal. Archie and Lilibet could be permanently erased from official history. Legal precedent could be set, making it easier for the monarchy to selectively control recognition of future generations. And Meghan's influence, already under scrutiny, could be diminished, leaving her with few options to protect her children. On the other hand, success could challenge centuries of royal authority, redefining the boundaries between tradition, law, and maternal rights. Sources hint at yet another complication: secret clauses in the king's decree that could affect more than just Archie and Lilibet. Leaks suggest that these clauses were crafted to prevent legal challenges, shield the monarchy from liability, and assert unilateral control over all royal recognition. These measures, if verified, would make any challenge far more complex, demanding both legal brilliance and strategic cunning from Meghan's team. In the end, the hidden legal battle is as much about perception as it is about law. The world sees headlines, debates, and outrage. The palace sees loyalty, tradition, and authority. Meghan sees her children, their identity, and the urgent need to fight for what is theirs. Every step in this conflict carries high stakes, emotional weight, and unpredictable consequences. And, as insiders hint, the next revelation, an undisclosed letter, a private memorandum, or hidden evidence, could dramatically shift the legal landscape in ways no one expects. What came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Prince Harry's response was silent, but deadly. That is how insiders described the moment Harry first learned that his children, Archie and Lilibet, had been removed from the official list of royals. Unlike Meghan, whose outrage had erupted into audible screams and confrontations, Harry's reaction was initially quiet, almost internalized. But make no mistake, his silence masked a storm of emotion: anger, disbelief, frustration, and a profound sense of betrayal. For a man who had always straddled loyalty to his family and protection of his own children, this was a blow that cut deeper than anything he had endured before. The news reportedly reached him in the early hours, conveyed through a secure call from Meghan. The Duchess' voice, trembling and urgent, relayed every chilling detail of the king's decree. Harry, thousands of miles away in a private residence, listened silently, absorbing the gravity of the situation. Sources suggest he sat alone for a long moment, staring at the floor, processing a reality that seemed almost surreal. His children, his heart, his family, suddenly reduced to entries crossed out on a secret royal ledger. The silent fury was layered. Harry had experienced public criticism before, endured scrutiny from the press, and navigated tense relationships within the family. But this was different. This was a direct, formalized challenge to his role as a father, and by extension, to the protection of his family. Every instinct in him screamed for action, for retaliation, for a way to restore what had been taken. Yet the rules of engagement were complicated. The monarchy wielded centuries of tradition, legal authority, and institutional power. Every move Harry considered carried risks: legal, personal, and public. Insiders report that Harry's first reaction was strategic, a calm before a storm. He reached out to trusted legal advisors, reviewing the decree with meticulous care. Every clause, every signature, every omission was dissected for vulnerabilities. He studied historical precedents, searching for patterns, loopholes, or any evidence that could challenge the king's unprecedented move. The legal battle, though partially orchestrated by Meghan, was now a deeply personal one for Harry, and his approach reflected a combination of caution and determination. The emotional stakes were also monumental. Harry reportedly struggled with feelings of anger and helplessness, compounded by memories of past conflicts with the family. For a man who had fought publicly to carve out a safe space for his wife and children, this was a betrayal on multiple levels. Audience question: what would you do if the very institution you once devoted your life to turned against your children? How would you protect them without making the situation worse? Harry's dilemma encapsulated this struggle perfectly, a balancing act between fury, strategy, and responsibility. Reports suggest that Harry also grappled with public perception. Any reaction, no matter how justified, could be spun negatively by media outlets, royal commentators, or palace spokespeople. In previous years, even minor gestures had been dissected into narratives of conflict or impropriety. Now, with his children officially erased from the list of royals, every public statement, Every interview and every social media post had the potential to escalate the situation further. The stakes were not just personal, they were global. The quiet fury did not last indefinitely. Sources describe moments when Harry, alone in contemplation, would pace rooms, make urgent phone calls, and coordinate with Meghan. Strategy meetings, legal consultations, and tactical discussions reportedly lasted for hours, sometimes stretching late into the night. Every possible avenue was explored: public challenges, legal motions, media statements, and private negotiations. The goal was clear: restore his children's recognition and challenge the decree in ways that minimized risk and maximized impact. And yet, tension simmered beneath the surface. Harry reportedly recognized that Meghan, in her visceral reaction, had made herself a lightning rod for criticism. His approach needed to be measured, deliberate, and strategic. While she screamed, confronted, and threatened, he moved quietly, leveraging his network, advisors, and legal experts to prepare a response that could not be ignored. Audience question: how do you fight an institution that is centuries older, wealthier, and more powerful than you, while still protecting your children? Harry's approach suggests that silence, though understated, can be just as potent as fury. The emotional weight of the situation was compounded by family dynamics. Harry reportedly tried to reach out to other senior members of the royal family, seeking counsel, mediation, or support. Some responded cautiously, others remained silent, and a few reportedly provided strategic advice. The sense of isolation, combined with the knowledge that he was confronting a system designed to uphold hierarchy and authority, intensified his resolve. He knew that any misstep could jeopardize not only his legal challenge, but also his ability to protect his children's legacy.